Harold's feet hurt. It had been a very, very long walk home. His coin had run out several weeks ago. Still, between his knowledge and experience as a soldier, he had managed to scrape by, selling a thing or two here or stealing another there. Eventually, though, the capital came into view, and what a welcome sight it was. He scratched at his beard. He'd need to find a place where he could wash and shave, or else no one would actually believe it was him. Maybe even a change of clothes, he thought, as he picked at the travel-worn coat that hung about him. Harold managed to get through the gate without too much hassle. Then he immediately made an unobtrusive beeline for a particular stone in a particular alley near the entrance, one of the organization's hidden supply caches. He hoped against hope that this one was still intact. The others he'd checked on his way home hadn't been. It was why Harold had found himself so hard-pressed for supplies. He'd certainly tried all the caches he'd recalled, looking to find some coins to buy a horse. One or two he could understand, but so many hidden stashes being left depleted? It didn't sit right. What had happened? He wasn't sure. The warden was usually very on top of making sure things ran properly, but perhaps this just slipped his notice. Secret hiding spots were harder to supply than one might expect, after all. Ensuring their locations stayed hidden was difficult, and usually couldn't be trusted to just anyone in the organization. The warden didn't handle such things personally, but he did oversee the ones who did. So if the organization wasn't running properly, that was not good news. As Harold walked through the streets of the capital, he scanned the familiar street signs and bustling crowds going about their days. A feeling of familiarity washed over him at the sight of a thriving city, which just made the people on street corners yelling about the end times stand out even more. He wouldn't be completely unfair, though. Harold did know a decent amount about how cults operated, in a professional sense, of course. That kind of came with the territory in his line of work, both in demonology and with the organization. He'd had to operate around several in his time as they worshipped the statues that were the lieutenants. Some oral traditions had been passed down enough that people recognized the lieutenants' locations as places of power. But even compared to the worst he'd seen, a cult he had to deal with personally a little over a decade back, these people were persistent. At least it seemed that not everyone was interested in listening. He watched one of the cultists, standing on a particularly dirty corner, get pushed into the muck by a particularly annoyed merchant. He soon picked himself up, but his expression turned distraught, and almost panicked at the state of his once white robe. The man who pushed the preacher he walked past. Harold watched him shake his head and mutter, "Bloody cleaners." Harold blinked in confusion. Cleaners? Was that what they were called? He set the thought aside for the moment. He'd finally made it to the safe house.